More phone calls coming up. 877-3DP show. People are sending in comparisons. Hey, what about Bill Callahan? He was going to take the West Coast offense to Nebraska. How about Charlie Weiss at Notre Dame? How about Herm Edwards at Arizona State? How about Lovie Smith at Illinois? All right. I don't know if I could compare those coaches with Bill Belichick. Okay. If we're trying to make an argument, that's not where I would go. Yes, Seton?
All of those coaches do have one thing in common that Bill Belichick does not. It was all pre-NIL, pre-transfer portal, it was the BC and like AD of football.
Oh, wow.
And those guys are all BC.
Yes, Todd. Yeah, Paulie.
That's exactly right. Anyone who, like Stuart Mandel saying Bill Belichick is coming down to college football. He's not coming down to college football in 1988 or even 2008 or 2015. It's a professional sport on college campuses. You're taking a guy, he's uniquely qualified because he's not just coached, he was the general manager of an NFL team at the same time, successfully.
Yeah, no.
Nick Saban left, like we were saying, because the playing field changed. The playing field changed, opened the door for Bill to do this. He wouldn't have done it 4 years ago.
But Bill is doing the same thing they're doing in college. He did that in the NFL. Free agency that's the transfer portal. And the money that's attached to this, that's, your NIL. Domonique Foxworth, the ESPN writer, commentator for Anscape, in-season football podcast, the Domonique Foxworth Show. And that's 3 times a week, also on Get Up, and a contributor to ESPN. Your reaction when you heard that Bill was actually taking the Carolina job was?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that it drove home was the NFL didn't really want him. And that's a shocking thing. I understand why people may not want to give up the power. And I read in Seth Wickersham's piece this morning about how Bill obviously said he was flexible. But the thing about that is, even if he were flexible, he's still Bill Belichick. And I feel like you drop him in any situation, it changes the alchemy in the room. And while he said he'd be willing to work with existing GMs, he's still Bill Belichick. And it's like having a tiger that you've trained. It's like you still know at some point he's going to be breathing over your shoulder and something's going to happen. I can't imagine that anyone who listened to him say, oh, yeah, I like your GM. It's fine. Oh, no, the president of operations, he's good with me. No one felt fully comfortable about bringing that tiger into their building.
What's the downside for Carolina?
Yeah, the downside for Carolina, it sounds like the 400-page manifesto about how he's going to control the whole organization. And I think the downside is the risk of giving yourself over to someone who has not proven that they can do it at this level. And I understand, I heard you guys coming in about how it is professional on this level. You're right. I think the biggest vote of confidence I would have for Bill Belichick is he's just really smart and really good and works really hard. And I think that most of the time we like to find all these other characteristics for why people are successful in different industries. And that's normally what it comes down to. Are you smart? Are you willing to work hard? And you're committed to this? I think Bill Belichick is, and he'll figure out all the other stuff.
Yeah, Carolina already won. We're talking Carolina football. They already won.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It makes them relevant immediately. It feels a little bit like the Deion Sanders effect in Colorado, where they went from being an irrelevant franchise or irrelevant kind of program to one that top people are going to consider and that we in the general public are going to care about. Week 1, we're going to care what the hell's going on in Carolina in a way that we haven't in a long time.
I don't know how important the personality of your head coach was when you played, because this is being brought back with Bill Belichick. Is he relatable to somebody 18 through 22 years of age? And I said, well, I don't know. Is it about your personality or how you, can you coach? Can you get me ready for the pros? How much money? I mean, these are the questions that these kids are asking nowadays. So back to my original question. How important was the personality of your coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think mine was different, but now times are very different. I think the obvious challenges of it are obvious. So I don't think we need to go to that. But I think if you want to look at the positive side of it, is it's going to be a self-selecting process. Like, no one is going to be surprised by who Bill Belichick is. So the type of players that want to play for a coach like Bill Belichick, they're going to show up there at Chapel Hill. And the guys who will be put off by Bill Belichick. Like, he's not going to change no matter what we think. And we are imagining him dancing in the back like Brian Kelly, dancing on spinning platforms to recruit coaches. To recruit kids. Hell no. That's not Bill Belichick. That's not who he's ever going to be. And I think that's a good thing because we know who he is. And the players that show up there are going to be players that want to be coached the same way Tom Brady was coached, that want to be treated the way that they're going to be treated. And I imagine he's going to have a separate staff to go out and smooze the kids and figure out money. I don't think Bill Belichick is going to have a situation where players are going to walk into his office after a good game and say, my NIL needs to go up or I'm going elsewhere. Those guys aren't going to go to Chapel Hill.
The team that loses tonight between the Rams and Niners, done?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Rams are one of the scarier teams. The Niners have kind of, I think they had a good week last week, but I think the window's kind of closed on this particular run. So I think the question is, can the Rams pull off this win? Because we saw what they did last week. They have an offense that's so impressive. And a defense with Jared Verse and some young pass rushers that I think can make big plays that could give a scare to the top two teams, the top three. I guess if you put Green Bay in there, the top four teams in the NFC. I don't see the Rams as a real Super Bowl contender, but they can knock somebody off in the first or second round and really piss off some fan base.
Matthew Stafford has had this renaissance. Like, to me, there'd be no reason to want to retire. If I got Sean McVay and I got Cooper and I got Nakua, I kind of like, as long as they have a good offensive line, I kind of like it. L.A., think it's pretty good.
Yeah, and Williams in the backfield, I think his body holding up is the big question. His arm is still as incredible as it's ever been. And I think that's a reminder, as much as we want to spend, and I, as like an analyst who played, I want to show all my knowledge by getting deep into how important these schematic adjustments are and how important the D-line is and O-line and coverages and disguise. You got a good-ass coach, and you got a great quarterback. You're never too far away. Like, we remember, after they won the Super Bowl, we were like, they're done. Maybe McVay should go to the media. They find a good player in the draft in Nakua, and they're right back near the top with some adjustments on defense. They could be a competitor in the NFC real soon.
The Eagles with the infighting, that you're winning, but then you have A.J. Brown speak up about we kind of have to fix the passing game here. I'm paraphrasing here, but yeah. You covered diva wide receivers.
Yeah.
We still kind of allow them to be divas. Why?
So, all right, I think my first reaction was much like yours, and I've since tried my best to view it from a different perspective because that's not the A.J. Brown I've heard about. You remember when Saquon was signed there, A.J.'s first comments were, we're going to make sure Saquon gets his. And if you watch the games, A.J. Brown is not a typical diva wide receiver. He's blocking the hell out of people. Like, he's a big physical guy. He's playing hard. And fixing the passing game, to me, if I'm giving it the most charitable reading, is A.J. Brown understanding what we all understand, is that Jalen Hurts is the limiting factor on this offense. And they're not going to be able to steamroll everybody through the playoffs. There's going to come a time where they're going to have to outscore somebody. They're going to have to attack down the field. So while I do agree that the wide receiver probably thinks the answer to every problem is throw me the damn ball, I think in this case, he might be right, that the real answer to the problem is their passing game is a little bit rudimentary compared to some of the other teams that they're going to have to match up against.
But we've said this about Jalen Hurts. He doesn't feel like he's a finished product when he's in the pocket. He's a good quarterback. He makes plays. I just think if a game comes down to his passing, then Philadelphia is in trouble.
I think so. And Philadelphia's offense is pretty simple, in part because they're more talented than everyone else. They're going to run the ball until you compromise yourself in order to stop it. Then Jalen is going to run the ball on the edge until you compromise yourself to stop that. And then they want to attack downfield. And I think other teams that are built like that, they do it the other way. I think in some games we go into with the Lions, who are very similar to them. The Lions will attack downfield first. And I think that's what A.J. Brown wants. And to have a more sophisticated passing offense, because some games they're going to need it. But, yeah, you're not going to change who Jalen Hurts is. Like, this is who he is.
Domonique Foxworth, ESPN writer, commentator. This Brett Favre, Mark Gastineau play has resurfaced now with the 30 for 30 coming out. Would you have a problem, though? Let me just ask you, your reaction when you saw Gastineau approaching Brett Favre and saying, I want my sack back.
I imagine my reaction was like everyone else's, was like I cringed a little bit and it was uncomfortable. But I also recognize that for athletes, like you put so much into it, like it becomes the peak of your life at such a young age. And it wasn't for me in part because I wasn't that great of an athlete, but I can't imagine if I was as great as Mark Gastineau. And that was what I was known for. You feel like there's some integrity to the things that you accomplish. Like I get why he's upset and I get why you want to hold on to that. And you feel like your record, like, I completely understand it. It's something that I don't think I would ever do, but I don't feel
Let's
the
say
same
Jerry
way Mark
Rice.
Gastineau
Let's
did.
say Jerry Rice is opposite you. Jerry Rice needs 6 more yards to set the single season record. How would you feel?
I would. So Jerry Rice was at the Broncos my rookie year, and he was one of my favorite players growing up. My brother and I looked up to Jerry Rice and Barry Sanders, and he was in our camp in training camp. And my first one-on-one was against Jerry Rice, my idol. And I pushed his ass out of bounds. Like I was fighting for my life. And I took that 40-year-old man and I put my hands on him. And so I imagine that I would have been the same way. I think there's a different understanding when you're Brett Favre. You're in a different fraternity when you're Brett Favre and you're Jerry Rice and you're Michael Strahan. They're in a different fraternity. Guys like me, hell no. You can't have nothing from I'm not giving you a yard.
Good to talk to you as always, Dominic. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
That's Domonique Foxworth, ESPN writer. The Domonique Foxworth Show. It's an in-season football podcast 3 times a week, also on Get Up as well.